amount of time involved in laying down the coal seams. Oh, now right there she's wrong. You see, she's looking at today's world, which is 70% underwater, and thinking that's how the coal got there. Well, if the pre-flood world was mostly land and loads of plants, the flood would form all that coal in 1 year. But she's guilty of looking at today's world and trying to interpret the past, just like 2 Peter warned us was going to happen. In Montana and Wyoming, there's a coal mine that is 10,000 square miles of coal up to 200 feet thick. That would take a lot of trees. And sometimes in coal, human artifacts are found. This bell was found inside a lump of coal. The sole of a shoe was found inside a piece of coal. The stitching was so clear you could see the twist in the threads. This iron pot was found inside a lump of coal. Your kids are going to be told coal formed millions of years ago. No, coal formed in the flood. The Bible says there were green herbs over all the earth. Genesis 1:29. I think there were plants from pole to pole. You know, when they went down to Antarctica, they discovered frozen leaves. There are no trees in Antarctica, and yet thousands of leaves are found deposited there, 250 miles from the South Pole. Today, the Earth is 70% underwater. Only 3% of planet Earth is habitable for mankind. The rest is underwater, deserts, ice caps, or just plain cold like it is up here in Wisconsin. 3% habitable for mankind. The Bible says God formed it to be inhabited. That's why He did it. I think the pre-flood world was loaded with trees from pole to pole. We cover lots more on that on video number 6. A layer of water above the atmosphere would block out the harmful rays of the sun. See, the sun puts off a lot of stuff besides light. It puts off gamma rays and X-rays and beta rays, and all them ray boys come down here, and they're kind of hard on your carcass. X-rays, particularly, are dangerous. How many have ever had an X-ray before? I broke 9 bones growing up. You go to the hospital, and they say, take off all your clothes and put this little gown on. They give you that little tiny gown that doesn't quite come together in the back, you know, it's kind of embarrassing. And they say, now walk down the hall about 12 miles. And on the left, you'll see the X-ray room. Well, if you make it all that way, they'll say, oh, we're so glad you made it. Would you please lay on this table? And they just got the table out of the freezer a few minutes before you got there. How many been on that same table? You know which one I'm talking about. It's ice cold. And he puts this weird machine on top of you and says, okay, now take a deep breath. Hold it. And then he runs out in the hall. He says, hey, Doc, come here. Is this machine dangerous? He says, oh, no, it's harmless. He says, how does it work, Doc? He says, well, when I mash the button, X-ray bullets come out of that machine, and they're going to blow right through your carcass like a machine gun, and we're going to blow you full of holes. They're tiny, though. You won't feel a thing. Actually, they're going to make a shadow of what's inside your body, a reverse image, which explains why so many radiologists have a negative outlook on life. We're going to blow you full of holes. And you say, well, Doc, if this is so harmless, how come you run out in the hall? Well, he knows long-term exposure to X-rays is dangerous. Many folks don't realize, though, we're getting X-rayed by the sun right now. The sun's X-rays are coming right through that roof, right through your body, and blowing you full of holes inside the building. Except on cloudy days, because water stops X-rays. And concrete stops X-rays, but this roof does not stop X-rays. And your skin feels the full force of those X-rays. You're getting blasted with millions of holes all day long, every day of your life. Your body has to fix the damage. No big deal. You do it all the time. You don't even think about it. But after 50 or 60 or 70 years, everybody around you starts to notice you are losing the battle for damage control. Your skin begins to wrinkle up. You say, Brother Hovind, I don't want to get old and wrinkled up. Okay. If you don't want to get old and wrinkled, there are 3 things you can do about it. Number 1, you can die early. Number 2, you can carry a lead or a concrete umbrella over your head. Don't ever get exposed to the X-rays. Or number 3, you can do what Elizabeth Taylor has done, the movie star. How many have heard of Elizabeth Taylor? I was at Walmart one day years ago, waiting in line, standing there trying to check out. And right beside me is this big old wall full of magazines. And one of them had Elizabeth Taylor's picture on there. She was getting married for the 40th time or something, And I thought, hey, I'm going to check this out. Somebody told me years ago that she's got a hole in her forehead. It's top secret. Nobody's supposed to know about it, but I just heard rumors, and I thought, I'm going to check it out. They say every morning she fills it in with caulk and covers it up with makeup, and nobody's supposed to know about it, but I'm a scientist. I like to learn things. So I got my Swiss Army knife out, which has a magnifying glass. By the way, this is why Switzerland has never been invaded. I picked up the magazine and I began staring at her forehead. People are walking down the aisle looking at me. I said, hey, what's the matter with you? I'm just looking at a magazine, okay? I stared at her forehead for a while. I finally figured out what the hole was. That lady has had so many facelifts down through the years trying to get rid of the wrinkles. It's her belly button right there. You say, Brother Hovind, I don't want to get old and wrinkled. Well, I'm sorry. If you get old, you're going to get wrinkled, okay? But I don't think they did before the flood. You know, before the flood, the Bible says the people lived to be over 900 years old. Now, there's one guy that travels around the country. He claims he's a creationist. But he says, now, folks, they didn't really live to be 900. They counted every month as a year. That's an even bigger miracle. Enoch was 65 when he begat Methuselah. Two of these guys were 65. Let's see, if you divide that by 12, he's 5.5 when he became a daddy. I don't think so, no. They really were living to be 900, and they were getting bigger. Here's Me by Robert Wadlow, the tallest man in this century, 8'11 1/4", had a size 37 shoe. Pretty good understanding. Goliath was 6 cubits and a span. It makes him just a little taller than Robert Wadlow. We would consider 9 feet tall gigantic. But I think before the flood, they might have got bigger than that. Here's a skeleton of a man found in a coal mine in Italy, 11 feet 6 inches tall. Well, long, not tall. He's laying down now. 11'6". How would you like to have that guy on your basketball team? Hey, throw the ball to Herman. Okay, Herman, drop it in right there. Okay, now come on back here and block off the whole court. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes the women get upset with me, and they say, Mr. Hovind, you said that was a skeleton of a man. Maybe it was a woman. That's a fair question. But I taught biology and anatomy. I happen to know how to tell the difference between a male and female skeleton. It is not the number of ribs. Only Adam was missing a rib, and only for a short time. Did you know there's only one bone in the human body that'll grow back if you take it out? The lower rib. You'd almost think God knew what he was doing if you didn't know better. Anyway, there are 2 ways to tell the difference between a male and female skeleton. One is to look at the feet. If they're pointed toward the mall, it's a woman. The other way to tell the difference is to look at the process on the temporomandibular joint. If that joint is worn out more, it's a woman. One lady said, that's because we have to tell you men everything twice. You don't listen first time. Guilty, guilty, guilty. A lot of folks don't realize the Roman Emperor Maximus was 8'6". That's where we get our word maximum from, or Maximus's boot. He was a big boy. You know, a skeleton 9 feet 8 inches tall was found in Brewersville, Indiana, back 100 years ago. Skeletons 9 feet tall found in Nevada. You don't hear about those in your public school, do you? Huge bones, similar in every respect to man's, were found embedded in thick layers of clam shells. As many as 20 skeletons were found. Every skeleton was fully 9 feet high back in 1902 in Louisiana. A skeleton 10 feet tall found in Humboldt Lake, Nevada. The legend in Guam is that giant people built the latte stones there. In Walkertown, Indiana, 8 giants ranging from 8 to 9 feet long, all wearing heavy copper armor, were found. Through the bungling of the diggers and the disinterest of the museum establishment, the discoveries were scattered and lost. Why would a museum not be interested in 9-foot skeletons? A 12-foot skeleton found in Lompoc Rancho, California, by some soldiers. The Indians got upset because they had disturbed a grave, so they reburied it. A 12-foot skeleton was found in Tucson, Arizona. The guy had 6 toes, bird-shaped headdress. Who was moving these giant rocks anyway? That's a camel in front of it for scale, folks. This is a 39-pound copper axe head. Swing a 10-pound sledge for 20 minutes and tell me how you'd like to swing a 39-pound axe head. This is a stone that I've heard was designed to be held between the thumb and finger for chipping. I think there's a lot of evidence there were giants in the earth in those days. We've been working for several years on a book about giants in the earth. Should be coming out here one of these days. A friend of mine and I are writing this book together. The Smithsonian has been very active in hiding discoveries about giants. because it goes against the evolution theory. See, evolution says we started off tiny and we're getting bigger and better and stronger and smarter. I think the Bible indicates we started off bigger and we're getting smaller and weaker and dumber. Now, it's true in the last 100 years there's been an increase of about 6 inches in average height, only in industrialized countries. And that's because of increased nutrition, food supply, better sanitation, nothing to do with evolution. This is a skull from Winnemucca, Nevada. They finally took it down a few months ago because so many folks were stopping because of my seminar saying, hey, I want to see the giant skull. But there was a giant human skull on display for quite some time. This is a normal human thumb bone. Underneath is a giant human thumb bone. This was found right near Mount Ararat in Turkey. The government of Turkey claims they have found the grave of Noah. The skeleton was 12 feet tall. That would make his cubit a little bigger, wouldn't it? How big was that ark? People say, 1 man and 3 boys could not build a boat that big. Oh, you didn't see those boys. Hey, Bubba, bring me that tree, would you? It's a thigh bone we've got in our museum in Pensacola, a replica of a thigh bone, 47-inch femur, indicating the man would have been about 13 feet tall. That's pretty big. There's a jawbone in a hotel in Turkey on display right now, 6.5 inches across the TMJs. Any one of you could put your head inside and rattle it back and forth inside the jawbone. In Wasaki, Wisconsin, 100 years ago, giant skeletons were found in a burial mound. One of the skulls was 3 times the size of ordinary humans. The Bible says there were giants in the earth in those days. I think it says that because there were giants in the earth in those days. So here we got the textbooks teaching the kids about cavemen. The Bible says we're made in God's image. Yet the textbook says this is Grandpa. What about all these cavemen the kids learn about anyway? Well, we'll cover that in the next session. There's never been a caveman. We'll cover them in the next session. The Garden of Eden was real different. Coming soon is the 1,000-year reign of Christ. Going to be real different than what we see today. Talk about that next time. Thank you. Welcome to the continuation of our seminar part 2 on the Garden of Eden. In this section, we're going to talk a little bit about the so-called cavemen, and then tell you what it was like in the Garden of Eden, and why the people lived to be 900, and what it's going to be like when God restores the earth like it used to be. For 1,000 years, we'll get to see it. This is not my wife, just a picture of her. We have 3 kids, all married, and the dog died. I made it. I'm home free. It's wonderful. And they all work for me and got grandkids coming now. The Bible says in 2 Peter chapter 3, in the last days, scoffers would come. They would walk after their own lust. And they would be saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of the creation. The Bible says they're willingly ignorant of how God made the heavens and the earth. And they're ignorant of the flood. And the Bible says when God first made the earth, there was a canopy of water above the firmament, mentioned in Genesis 1, verse 6 and 7. The world was a lot different before the flood came. There was water under the crust of the earth. That's mentioned in Psalm 24 and Psalm 136. Before the flood came, the people lived to be 900 years old, on an average 912. Methuselah, 969, was the oldest, but most all of them lived to be over 900. So, the Bible teaches man was made in God's image and lived over 900 years. The evolution theory is very different. The evolution theory says, this is Grandpa. Now, maybe that doesn't offend you, but it ought to offend you if you love the Lord, that they're teaching you came from an ape-like ancestor, and the Bible says we're made in God's image. So what is the truth about the so-called cavemen? Is it possible for an ape-like creature to become a human? Well, let's discuss a few of these so-called cavemen. It depends what you mean by caveman. Many people in the Bible lived in caves. There are cavemen today, people who are living in caves, like Osama bin Laden, okay? So, there's the world's most